This is the Pelikan M200. It's a compact piston filling fountain pen which sits at the bottom of the Souveron lineup. It's available in a huge variety of colors and it has limited releases coming out just about every year. The pen that we have today is from the early 2000s and it's made of a beautiful transparent red. The top finial is a black plastic piece and it features the Pelikan logo, which includes a mother feeding two baby pelicans. And in recent years, this logo has been updated to include only one baby pelican. That finial has kind of a crown-shaped profile, and then we have a metal band which incorporates a bent metal clip. The clip is stylized to look like a pelican beak. It is very springy and functional with a really nice flare up at the bottom, and that allows it to easily go over thick fabrics and notebooks. The cap has a very gradual taper widening subtly down to the bottom where we see a cap band which reads Pelikan, Germany. The cap comes off in just about one turn to reveal a stainless steel nib. In the middle it says Pelikan, it has the Pelikan logo, and here we can see the updated Pelikan logo. This is a new nib which I swapped in from the original. And at the bottom we have an F for the size of the tipping material, which in this case is fine. And on the back we can see a black plastic feed. The grip section is fairly short. It starts with a flare up and then it has a taper to threads which are smooth to the touch. The barrel is then straight all the way across, and then we have a step down to the end finial which starts with a metal band, and at the bottom it has a rounded off edge. If I give that finial a twist, we'll see that it doubles as a piston knob. Turning it in the clockwise direction will retract the rod inside the barrel and allow you to bring ink into the pen. In the hand, the pen is lightweight, well balanced, and for me with medium-sized hands, I can get away with using it for long writing sessions. But luckily, the cap does post deeply and securely. It transfers the weight just about to the crook of my hand, which makes for an extremely comfortable writing experience. The grip section is fairly narrow compared to other fountain pens and short. I find that my thumb tends to rest right on these threads, but as I mentioned, they are very smooth to the touch. In terms of size comparisons, here's the M200, a typical Pilot G2 rollerball pen, and your standard Sharpie. Before we disassemble the M200, I wanted to take a moment here to compare it with a few other piston filling fountain pens. First up, I have the TWSBI Eco, and here I have it in indigo and bronze. Much like the M200, this is kind of a collector's dream. It's offered in a huge variety of colors, with limited releases coming out just about every year. Next up, I have another Pelikan pen. This is the M400, and this is just one step up in the Souveron lineup from the M200. Its body is virtually identical. In fact, the cap and the nib are fully swappable with the M200. The only difference here is that this one has a 14 karat gold nib, which we'll take a look at in just a moment. Next, I have another compact piston filler. This is the Kaweco Classic Piston Sport, which really just recently came out on the market. It's a very compact pen. It's the only one on the table that is considered a pocket pen, and it's also the only pen on the table that has a blind cap that conceals the piston knob. And to round things off, I have the Pilot Custom Heritage 92. This is the only piston filling fountain pen that Pilot makes. It's also a pretty compact pen, though it is a bit longer than the M200, and it's also made out of injection molded plastic with really nice degrees of finishing. You can't decipher any injection molding gates or seam lines. Of the pens on the table, they all have spring-loaded clips, with the exception of the Kaweco Sport. This one has an optional clip which you have to purchase separately. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps removed. Uncapped, we can see the TWSBI Eco is the longest pen, followed closely by the Custom Heritage 92. We can also now see the ink window on the Kaweco Sport. The M200 is also offered in opaque finishes, which have an ink window just in the front of the barrel, similar to the Kaweco Sport. Let's take a closer look at these sections and nibs. All nibs are fully exposed, and the Custom Heritage 92 as well as the M400 both have 14 karat gold nibs. The rest of these nibs are stainless steel. The Kaweco Sports grip section is kind of hourglass in shape, and the rest of these pens have fairly similar grip styles with a flare out at the front followed by taper to threads, and they really only differ in their overall thickness and length. Let's take a look at these pens with their caps posted. All caps post deeply and securely. The TWSBI has the most shallow posting cap of the bunch, and the most compact pen when it's posted is by far the Kaweco Sport. In order to disassemble the M200, you may find grippy materials are useful to have, as well as something to use as a poker. And here I'm just using the back of an old chopstick. The cap unscrews, and inside we can see there is a cap liner that ends just about there. This is actually attached to the finial, and it's pretty easy to remove. We're going to grab the edge of the finial and give it a counterclockwise turn. And we'll see that there's actually a ring that's holding this assembly together. We can then remove the clip and push the finial through the front of the cap. And there we can see our cap liner with that finial piece. In terms of cleaning this, I just run it under warm water or maybe soak it with a little bit of mild detergent. For the nib and feed, we hug them with our grippy material and give it a counterclockwise turn. And there we can see that they are held together by this little compression limiter. Unfortunately, I haven't found an easy way to remove this ring. So for typical cleaning, I just soak this in some warm water, maybe add a little bit of mild detergent, and if I have really stubborn ink stains, I might throw it in an ultrasonic bath. For the pen body itself, you can't remove the grip section. It's part of the same piece as the rest of the barrel. And if you unscrew the back piston knob, we'll see that there are no flats underneath. Typically with piston units, you'll see two flats that you can grab a hold of with a wrench to unscrew it from the barrel. But if we take a look at the demonstrator version of this pen, we'll see that the piston unit is actually snapped into the barrel. And that's the same design that we also see on the M400 as well as the more high-end M600. And that means, unfortunately, there isn't an easy way to remove the piston unit. If you do need it serviced or replaced for whatever reason, unfortunately, it needs to be sent out to an expert. In terms of cleaning this barrel, I typically take a blunt needle syringe, insert it into the front, and force water until it runs clean. And then if I want to try to grease up the piston head, I'll take a little bit of silicone grease on a toothpick, insert it through the front, and paint the walls. And then I'll run the piston head up and down until it runs smoothly. So for today, this pen is fully disassembled. In order to reassemble, I'm going to start with the nib and feed, which simply go into the front and can be screwed down. If you want to make sure that you have a good seal, it is a good idea to add some silicone grease to these threads. In terms of the cap, we'll grab our cap and our liner and drop it through the top. The liner is keyed, so in one orientation, it will go a little bit deeper into the cap. And I just simply turn this with my finger until it drops deeper, just like that. We'll then grab our poking tool to hold that cap liner in place while we put our clip back on the pen. And then the ring is tapered. We want the smaller diameter to be facing the pen. And we'll just screw that down. Once it starts feeling tight, we're going to take a look at where our clip is and try and orient it how we like it. Personally, I like it being just underneath that logo. And then we'll tighten it down the rest of the way. And then we'll reattach that to the pen body. And at this point, we're ready to ink up. Inking up the M200, today I selected a fairly new ink to me. This is Monteverde Blueberry Muffin. It's a beautiful red ink that reminds me a lot of Diamine's Writer's Blood. However, this one leans a little bit more purple. Let's take the cap off the pen. Make sure the piston unit is extended all the way down. We'll remove the cap from the bottle of ink. Put the nib into the ink and then screw up the piston unit. In order to get a full fill, I'm gonna expel the ink and then draw it up one more time. That looks like a nice full fill. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off the nib and the grip section. We'll cap up the bottle of ink. As well as the pen. And at this point, we're ready to write. Okay, writing with the Pelikan M200. Cap unscrews and I am going to post it. And today we have a stainless steel fine nib. And it's an expertly tuned nib. It's very smooth with just a hint of feedback so you can tell what kind of paper you're writing with. It has great ink flow, it's bouncy, and I guess if I have anything negative to say about this nib, it's that it does write pretty thick for a fine. I would say that this is closer to a Western medium. So if you are one that enjoys a thinner line, you may want to consider this with an extra fine nib. In terms of our ink, today we have one from Monteverde. And it is called Blueberry Muffin. For flex, I'm going to turn the page. As I mentioned, it's a pretty bouncy nib. It does produce a little bit of line variation, but it's by no means a flex nib. And for reverse writing. Actually very smooth. Ink flow is keeping up just fine. I would say this might be one of my best reverse writers. So you certainly could consider this for a little bit of a thinner line. And of course, if you want a heavier line, just push down a little bit more. So what do I think of the Pelikan M200? I really love this pen. I think that the design is classic and timeless. I also love how compact it is and the fact that it has a piston filler, so it has a really big ink capacity. That makes this pen a wonderful travel companion. And because it sits at the bottom of the Suvaron lineup, it is relatively affordable. Plus, it is available in a wide variety of colors. When people grow their fountain pen collections, I find they kind of come into two camps. One being variety, and that's kind of the one that I sit in, where I try to not get more than one version of the same pen, and the other being ones that like to collect the same pen in many different colors. And this one, because I do enjoy writing with it so much, I am tempted to pick it up in another version. And the reason that I love writing with it so much is because of this nib. As I mentioned, it's smooth, wet, with a nice bounce, and it is just a joy to use. But I do find areas for improvement with this pen, and most of it does come down to the long-term serviceability of it. The nib, I wish that you could easily remove it from this feed in case you wanted to swap it in for a different nib. And the piston unit not being able to be easily removed from this barrel means that it might be a little bit challenging to maintain for long-term use. Besides that, I think that the overall form factor may be a bit small for some people. Again, for me with medium-sized hands, I can get away with using it for notes unposted, but personally I do prefer the way that it feels in the hand when it is posted. And the grip section, as I mentioned, is pretty short and narrow. Personally, I like slim fountain pens, but I know a lot of people that don't. And I think, honestly, Pelikan does realize that, and that's why this sits at the bottom of the Suveron lineup. As you work your way up towards the M1000, the pen grows substantially in size. But overall, I am a really big fan of this pen. As I mentioned, I am considering picking it up in a few other colors. I love the styling, I love the size, and that it has a huge ink supply. But most importantly, I love the writing experience with this nib. And that just leaves me to say, thank you for watching.